is my honor today to have this guest with us on the Power Transformation Podcast. What a journey she has had, and what a story of overcoming and thriving that she's had. And oh my goodness, her experience. She is a wealth of knowledge whose life transformed suddenly, and she has turned what could be pain into purpose, but so much more. And I have none other but the honor of introducing Nancy Deyo to the Power Transformation Podcast. Welcome, Nancy.
Thanks, Alethea. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have you. And I always like to start off with a fun, lighthearted icebreaker question, just so that we as the audience can get to know you more as a person. And then we'll dive right into more of the heart and the crux of our interview. But this is the icebreaker question for you. Nancy, I see that behind you, there are lots of pictures. If a person is listening to this, they aren't able to see it, but there's so many beautiful pictures and settings and scenery around you. And so my question is, although we are doing this interview right now, if you could think of any setting or scenery or any place in the world that you would love to go to, whether you've been there or not, where would it be and why?
Oh, I love that question. I know exactly where I would be. I would
Oh,
be in the savannah, in the
hmm.
Serengeti in Tanzania. And Africa has always felt like a second home to me. And there is nothing that I love more than being out in nature with a beautiful vista, experiencing animals in their natural habitat, interacting in ways that we could model as humans. So that's
Oh,
where I would plunk myself if I could be anywhere at the moment.
that is beautiful. When, out of my own personal interest, when was the first time you traveled to the continent of Africa?
I went to Tanzania
Mm-hmm.
in 1999, and I went there as a volunteer to help build a secondary school for kids out in a very rural area, about
Hmm.
10 hours from the capital.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was really a transforming experience, learning a little bit of Swahili, understanding how the people in the village lived, sitting next to kids side by side, making bricks out of water and sand and a little bit of cement, and trying to be part of what was going to create a new future for them.
That is absolutely lovely. I've never been to Tanzania, but I have traveled to South Africa, and one of the parts of South Africa that I did go on was to Hoedspruit for a safari, and that was absolutely amazing being right there up close and personal with so much wildlife and nature, and it was beautiful. It absolutely took my breath away. And there is such an adventurous part of you, Nancy, that is quite fascinating to me, just knowing a bit about your journey and more that you are going to share. And you have so many experiences from your career and everything else in between. But if I were to ask you this, how would you respond? Who is Nancy Deyo?
I love that question because who I am today is so different from who I was as a kid and who I was as a young adult. And if I answer both, if that's okay,
Sure, you answer it any way you'd like.
I think as a kid, I was the second of two girls. My sister was a genius. So was my dad. And I grew up under a little bit of a shadow of my older sister. And I remember being in elementary school, and every year when I'd walk into my new classroom, the teacher would say, "Oh, you're Kathy's sister. She is the smartest girl I've ever had in any of my classes,"
Mm,
which was tough and kind of made me who I was, because I felt like I had to push harder. study longer, outlast, outrun everybody and everything in order to live up to that ideal that pedestal that I put my sister on. And I think as an adult, that translated into a very ambitious young woman in Silicon Valley who was always trying to be disciplined and persevering and controlled and reaching the next goal. And I learned the hard way that this kind of behavior and this kind of strategy doesn't always work for you.
Mm,
We'll talk about that, but I think that today I'm calmer, I'm more centered and grounded. I don't compare myself to other people and certainly not to a sister that I love. And I think that I listen better and I lead by example, not by directive.
Ooh, I like that.
And
Wow.
I think our
Wow.
experiences just form who we are. And I can't help but be the product of that upbringing and then the 15 years of struggling to recover after I became chronically ill.
hmm I like lead by example and not directive. And how has that really influenced your life?
Leading by directive was, I think, the way that I thought one should be an executive.
Mm,
I was green. I was a new CEO. I had a large team. I thought that I needed to be directive and specific and define the terms of the game, if you will,
mhm,
instead of realizing that I could just show people by example who they might be, how they might operate, and how they might navigate business in the world in their life
mhm,
overall. And I think that I learned that this different way of being is probably more inclusive and more empowering than leading through instruction or directive.
mm. Wow. That is quite powerful. And I think that people who actually will take nuggets from this interview is that there are people that are still leading by directive, but may want a change or a change of pace. But then a lot of people don't even know when they're in that moment until something can happen to them. And just take us a bit back on that journey. I think it's quite intriguing. It's quite commendable, actually, with your accomplishments. Just not financially as a CEO, but in terms of professionally down that path of Silicon Valley. Was that leadership ability always in you as even a child? And how did it show up to influence who you were in the roles you had prior to your life changing?
I think that that kind of leadership was core to who I was as a person. Even as a young kid, it would show up in drama,
Oh,
in plays, it would show
uh-huh.
up in helping other kids, it would show up in some of the career choices I made because I was so eager to work with a team and to help guide them and lead
Mm-hmm.
them. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it was always in me. Silicon Valley amplifies all of those tendencies because it requires a level of competitiveness and aggression that isn't for everybody, to be really
Mm-hmm.
frank. In retrospect, I think it was a bit of a toxic environment for a young woman to be in a, a place of such competitive kind of dog eat dog
Mm-hmm.
world.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine that because that takes what an outsider looking in is that it seems to take courageous efforts to really get to where you were in that type of a move, but it also took you knowing something even greater about yourself to say, hey, I am just as capable, just as qualified. I know how to do this. I know who I am. And that version of you, though, in that time, as you said, leading by directive was really a different shift for you in terms of who you are now. And we're going to get to where you are now. But if we could just pause briefly in us knowing who you are, share with us just a brief Cliff's Note or snippet version of what would you say is a part of your life's assignment, purpose, or mission now in the state of being of who you are today. Describe that for us.
I think today my being is empathic,
Mm,
passionate, focused on lifting other people up, focused on making their lives better,
mm,
focused on taking what I've learned about life's journey and sharing it in a vulnerable and open way so that maybe other people can learn from it.
mm-hmm,
Um, I've always been very committed to women and girls and to lifting them up globally. I care very much about any young woman being able to see a doctor when she needs one, or being able to get an education when she deserves one, or being able to be economically independent. And that's been part of who I am since I was a child. And that still exists today.
mm-hmm. Wow. And so here you are, if we could just get into the heart of this, only because there's so many lessons, so much that you've grown into and learned from this time. Here you are, Nancy, navigating life, leading a company, really living what may appear to others as that American dream of really having it all, accomplishing it all. Take us to the moment in that time as that CEO, as that executive in Silicon Valley, what your life looks like, and then start to share with us when you noticed a shifting or something happening in your health situation that started you on this path that has led you to where you are today. It's a loaded question, but take it any direction that you would like.
Okay. Well,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
as a CEO in the Valley at that time, I was 1000% focused on the mission, which was to make the company successful, to take it public. My day started at 4:30 in the morning. I'd
Mm,
get up, I'd go to a gym, I'd work out, I'd be at work before 7 after driving an hour from my home in San Francisco down to Silicon Valley. And the day was a multitasking frenzy of decisions, um, revisiting sales targets, pitching
mhm,
investors, preparing for board meetings, going to conferences, speaking at engagements. It was a performance culture, a productivity culture,
mm,
and one that had just tremendous stress on my body and my mind, though I didn't realize it at the time. I just thought it was how you felt when you were a professional adult in a
huh.
big role.
Yeah.
We kind of live these things without realizing what they're doing to us. But I
Uh-huh.
was frayed at the edges. I was exhausted. I was certainly running on empty, just pushing myself in every possible way to achieve what was probably an unreachable goal, to do
Mm,
something, as perfectly as I could, which is also an impossible goal.
mhm,
I think that I didn't realize how much the pace was affecting my health. And we started to run out of money. which
Oh.
happens to many companies in the Valley. We had raised a ton of money very quickly from some high profile investors, and I was out to prove that I was worthy of their trust.
Mm-hmm.
And like so many startups, I think 9 out of 10 fail, but the ones that they talk about are the ones that succeed. And mine was destined for an ending that wasn't the ending I wanted. I had to sell the
Mm.
company to save it, not take it public. It did not have the capital and the capacity to do that. And I had to sell it to an arch rival.
Oh, wow.
And that was so painful for me, just
I can
horrible.
imagine.
They had
Oh.
been sniffing around at our shoes for years, and while it was an ending that gave some people employment and was a possible
Mm.
continuation of the business, for me it was a palpable failure and pretty much a first in my life, which
Mm. Oh.
I have to say, looking back, I think that failure is really healthy, especially if you can pull the lessons out of it and figure out what you're going to do the next time.
Uh-huh.
But in
Yeah.
my case, after this happened, I was so devastated. I thought to myself, I've got to prove to the world and to myself, most importantly, that I can succeed at something. This didn't work out. I'm going to succeed at the next thing. And because I was an athlete, I thought I'm going to take on an athletic feat extraordinaire. And
Extraordinary one. Yes, indeed.
yes. And I thought back to the those moments in Africa, and I thought
Hmm.
I'm going to climb the highest mountain in Africa.
Okay, so Nancy, let me just tell you, most people don't just have that thought. I'm going to climb that. They'll say, I'm going to take a trip to unwind and relax. I'm going to do this, but not you. Here you are,
Unfortunately,
overachievers.
I
I'm going
think
to climb the mountain.
that determination is one of those qualities, for better or for worse, it's
Yeah.
ingrained. So my husband and he agreed to go with me, and
Wow.
we both started to train avidly for what is not a technical climb. It's 19,000 and some feet up, but it's not ropes and ice axes and
Uh-huh.
crampons and things like that. It's really aggressively hiking straight up for 7 days
Oh,
to get to the top. So
oh,
it's
I
possible
see.
for even, I would call myself an athlete, but a novice at mountain
Mhm.
climbing to do this.
Okay.
And I have to say, to just quickly tell you about that journey, by the time I hit the mountain, I was already in trouble and I had no business climbing because I had injured my back working out on a broken Stairmaster
Oh.
and shoved the pain down and said to myself, I'm doing this anyway. So, had I turned back and decided that I could live with not achieving this secondary goal, I would have been fine. But I persevered. And the first day I had to relinquish my pack because I couldn't stand the weight on my spine. The second
Ooh.
day, I was having trouble hiking and had to lie down at the end of it each day through the night to recover. The third day, I couldn't sit for meals, so I would hike and then I'd go to bed. And on the fourth day, the team fashioned me a back brace out of duct tape and an inflatable pillow to
Oh
hold
my
my
God.
spine together. And at 16,000 feet, I knew that I was in trouble. And I remember saying to my husband, either tomorrow is the hardest day, I'm going to get badly injured, or somebody on the team is going to hurt themselves trying to help me. I need to go down. And that was really admitting a second failure, but I knew that things would be better at lower altitude. We were at half the oxygen of sea
Hmm.
level. And as I started to descend with two porters who didn't speak English, and my Swahili was basically enough to say my name and how are you,
Oh my goodness.
I
Ooh.
collapsed in pain. And they carried me to a tiny tent where we made camp. And I remember waking up at midnight alone and unable to use my legs. And I thought, I what is happening to me? Something is really, really wrong with my body. And I remember
Mhm.
trying to move, and it was like somebody had driven a steel rod through my spine.
Ooh.
And the only thing I could conclude was that I was probably bleeding out and that I was going to end up with my name on a rock, like so many
Mm,
climbers who sadly don't make it down the mountains that they climb. And I also realized in that moment that the very strategies that had I had built my life around about pushing and shoving
mhm,
down pain and persevering at all costs weren't working. And
mm.
I didn't know what to do. It unfortunately it took me 15 years to realize that resilience is about so much more than pushing through.
Oh my gosh,
You
yes.
know,
Ooh.
it's about finding a different way to live and working within the limits of what our human bodies and our minds can tolerate.
Hmm.
But that was a hard-earned lesson that sadly I didn't learn on that mountain.
Yeah. Let me take a pause here. Wow. Thank you for being so clear about that. And although you were in this excruciating pain and you didn't know exactly what the outcome was going to be, but you had such introspective moments despite the pain of it all. What do you think gave you the will, Nancy, to say, this is not how my story is going to end? This is not the final chapter. I must push through and at least survive this.
I think part of that was ingrained in me as a really young kid. You know,
Mm,
our family didn't quit. We never gave up.
mm-hmm,
And I think I had to try a little bit harder because of the family that I was born into.
mm-hmm,
And I had to push myself. And so it honestly didn't occur to me that that might be it. I think that I lived in this, I held these two feelings at the same time, the feeling that I might be dying, but the feeling that this cannot be the way that it ends.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And hope, and ideally, that inability to give up is part of what got me through.
Yeah. And then in what ways did experiencing that teach you something about yourself that was new or that you really didn't know about yourself?
I think it taught me two things. It taught me that I'm really vulnerable and
Mm,
human. And I think that I had so much armor covering me in when I was in business and growing up that it didn't let me be only human.
mm,
So I think that was part of it. And I think that the other thing was realizing that no matter how hard I tried, no matter how hard I pushed, that that wasn't going to serve me anymore. And
oh,
I didn't know what to
mm,
do with that because
yeah.
that kind of approach to life defines you. It's part of your identity.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't work, then you're not sure who you are.
Mm-hmm. And I like you saying that because it shows how our identity is constantly forming who we once were. It's literally that you shed a version of who Nancy was on that mountain. It was like a shedding of skin, like a snake does. It was a shedding of that skin where that part of Nancy was no longer there, even if you didn't realize it in that moment, but
Mm,
something transformative was happening to you right there. Where having that mountain and it's so ironic that despite the physical excruciating pain you were were going through, while we know that that broken stairmaster kind of triggered it, the peak of it was on that mountain. And mountains are so metaphorical in so
Oh,
many
yeah.
ways. And the fact that you hiked as high up as you could, it's just the fact that you were on that mountaintop. And what that mountain represented was you really elevating to a new level of yourself that you didn't even realize was happening in that moment. And so take us to the point you're in the tent and you aren't exactly sure what's going to happen next. Take us to when you're in that tent, but then the next chapter comes where you are in hospital or healing. Take us to the second part of this journey of transformation, honestly.
Yeah. I love that question because before that mountaintop, I was so
Mhm.
clear on who I was.
Mm,
I was a CEO, I was a wife, I was a daughter, I was a sister, I was a community member. We all have all these roles.
mhm,
And I got carried off that mountain on piggyback with what I didn't realize at the time ended up being a broken back and some smashed discs. And as I landed in the hospital in Nairobi,
mhm,
doctors told me for 6 months in Nairobi, in London, in San Francisco, that I just needed rest or I just needed physical therapy, that I would be fine. But I knew inside me that something was really wrong. And it creates this internal split where you start to wonder if you're crazy or if
mhm,
if somehow what's happening isn't real.
mhm,
But along with that is an identity shift where I went from being so sure who I was. I was that CEO walking through the airport in a blue suit with a
mhm,
briefcase slung over my shoulder, going to a meeting. And all of a sudden, I became a chronic pain patient, period, full stop.
mm,
I was nothing else. I couldn't be a wife. I wasn't there to listen and to love and to learn and support my husband. He was my caregiver.
mhm,
I couldn't be a daughter to my aging parents. They had to take care of me.
mm,
So it flipped upside down everything that I knew about myself. And I think that, the pain was excruciating and it was so bad that I lived lying down because I couldn't sit
mm.
up.
Ooh.
So I lay on a couch, lay in a bed with a pile of opioids next to me and sometimes even a
Mhm,
commode because I couldn't make it to the bathroom. The
mhm,
steps were too many for me. And that just completely shatters who you think you are. And
mm,
when you lose a role, if you've defined yourself by something, it's very confusing because you don't know from where to even rebuild. But I do have to say, and this is only looking back, that
mhm.
that shattering is also an opening
Yes.
because you're defining yourself more on what's real and what's authentic than what how you perform or what that role was. So it's
Mhm,
really more about the essence of who you are that you could rebuild. But it's only in retrospect that I'm able to see that as a positive opening and
mhm.
not a dismantling.
I like that about being shattered because it reminds me of a puzzle. Some people are puzzle enthusiasts. I like puzzles the older I get. I didn't have the patience for when I was growing up. But now the puzzles and the bigger the puzzle, the more intrigued I am. But the thing about the puzzle is that it's all of these multiple pieces, but once you put it back together, it's this beautiful picture of whatever it is. And so when you use that shattering example, I envision, I'm such a visual person, you as that puzzle piece is that what have seemed to be broken to some was necessary in order for it to come back together as a better, more effective human being and version of yourself.
Mm.
And what's interesting is we see movies all of the time of different people's lives, especially entertainers or public figures. And in that 2 hour slot, you cram together so much of that person's life. And of course, they highlight a lot of the glory times, and we don't realize the process or the journey that it takes to get there. So, put into perspective, Nancy, for us, the time frame, because who we have now in front of us externally, you're well put together, you're well spoken, you talk about, oh, yes, this happened to me, but you're telling us about the pain and the things that you had to do. But at the end of the day, it's not like this was a 1 week or a 2 week journey. So time frame wise, take us from that mountain experience until the moment where you decided to say, I can either wallow in this, I can be miserable for the rest of my life, but instead I'm going to choose to find the good in this. Not saying that the circumstance is good, but choosing to find the good. To give us an estimate of that time frame, but also what was that aha moment that made you decide that? Because not everybody gets to a point where they're talking on podcasts, they're doing something positive with their life, talking about chronic pain and chronic illness and things like that. Take us on that part of your journey.
There was an aha moment, and
Hmm.
it was the moment that I hit rock bottom, and it came about 7 years after the injury on the mountain.
Years, seven
Years.
years.
And the doctors had done everything they could for me. They had structurally put my body back together. They had tried to address what was pretty intractable pain that kept
Mm.
me lying down. And in an act, kind of a last ditch effort, I went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. They had a 3 week pain rehab and drug detoxification program.
Mm.
And it's a 3 week program. In week one, they rip off all the drugs. And we can talk separately about withdrawal.
That's
It's
right. Phew.
devastating to be
Mm.
pulled off of opioids so quickly.
Mm.
And in weeks 2 and 3, they took me from lying on the floor of that conference center to starting to push myself to sit and to walk and to do activities of daily life like vacuuming the rug or cleaning the kitchen. And I left there feeling like I might be able to get a semblance of my life back. I might be able to recreate a life.
Mm.
But the curious thing was their approach was so similar to mine at the time, which was push, push, push,
Mm.
push, faster, harder, longer. And I came home, and 2 days later, I was hospitalized for just intractable pain on more opioids than I had been on before I went to the Mayo Clinic, because I could not handle the speed with which they forced back physical function and took me off the drugs. And I remember my doctor walking into the room and saying, I have good news and bad news. The good news is your films look fine. I mean, there is nothing physically wrong except your
Wow.
pain. And we've basically done our best, but we need to discharge you. And at that moment, my husband went looking for a nursing home to place me in because he
Oh.
felt that my condition was so severe that he did not believe he could care for me anymore. And I thought to myself, the medical system just doesn't have anything more for me. They have done their best,
Hmm.
but this is how I'm going to be. I'm on my own. I've got to let go of all possibility of returning to that person who I was, because that person is gone. But maybe I need to focus on the things that I can still do. If I've lost the ability to navigate the world vertically, like most humans do, sitting and
Hmm.
standing and walking, I can use my brain. And I have to find a different way because I am not participating in the world. I am a shut in my bedroom, in my living room, and I'm lonesome and isolated. And I don't want to go to a nursing home. And my
Yeah.
husband didn't want to send me there either. He came
Hmm.
back at the end of that day and said, that place is not for you. That is not where your life is going to end. And I think that was an aha
Hmm.
moment for me that day, realizing that it was up to me to figure out a way to move forward. I mean, I wasn't ready. I was a mess. I was not sure of what I could do, but I thought I had my brain and I had
Hmm.
to figure it out. And I can go to the next step if you want me to continue, but I
Hmm.
did figure out how to re-enter the world using the things that I could still do and
Yeah.
letting go of the things that I couldn't.
Yeah, and we'll go there in a second, but
Yeah.
even I was stunned. So for any person listening, although I have a conversation with my guests prior to, I am intentional about not finding out all of the details of the story because I like genuine conversations, a real reaction. So when you said nursing home, oh, wow. And I know that for your husband, that had to be one of the most painful conclusions that he had gotten to, but he was only doing what he could in his capacity at the time. And I'm glad that he backtracked on that. But it's interesting because just yesterday when I was taking my dad to his chemo appointment, we saw his doctor first, and his doctor explained to him, and dad is also diagnosed with dementia, but he explained to him, I can only see what the labs show, what the imaging show, but these labs as well as imaging don't show the pain. So you have to tell me what the pain is like. You have to, but I can only do but so much. And so that struck me to know that your imaging looked as good as it was going to get, and they couldn't do anything about the pain. And so this navigation and with opioids, anybody who has an addiction to that, anyone who has been on it for even a short period of time with a health challenge understands the temporary relief or feelings it can bring. And I understand how a person can become dependent on it. But you knew that you didn't want to live the rest of your life dependent or addicted on them. So, how then, Nancy, did you choose to not only use your brain for your next step? But how did you intentionally choose to find some type of a balance in that pain factor? And this may be an ignorant question, but I don't want to make assumptions. Even to this present day, how do you navigate moments when there may still be some pain, and how intense is it?
I think over the course of the 15 years that I was in pain, I learned that the fear of the pain
Hmm.
can be worse than the pain itself.
Ooh.
So being afraid of something that's going to happen in the future can create a cycle of just pain and anxiety that is like a tornado. So I learned that pain wasn't the enemy, that I had to treat it as information that
Hmm.
was trying to communicate something from a part of my body to my brain, and to try to respect that, to live in it and work with it. and maybe even reframe it. I mean, today, if I get sore, I say to myself, my back hurts today because I took a long hike, not
Hmm.
I'm crippled, I'm disabled, and this is going to consume me and my life is over. I was quite a catastrophizer back in the
Mm,
day. It's very easy when you don't know when something will end to set off the alarm bells
yeah.
about it.
Hmm. Wow. And so you making the choice to use your brain, how has that served you in this moment of time? And talk to us about how you use your platform to not only bring awareness, but to give people hope, and how you use your story as that vehicle to help change the lives of others.
For a long time, I hadn't written the story.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't processed it. I hadn't found the meaning in it. And I actually sat down for a year and wrote the story in a memoir. And I thought to myself, this is one tool that may be able to help people feel seen or heard, or
Mm-hmm.
they might read something in the pages that they say, that's me. I'm like that.
Mm,
Or what she did there in that chapter when she decided she wasn't going to give up. I can't give up either. And I think the purpose of the writing and speaking about the journey is solely to try to give a gleam of a different way of doing things to people out there who are struggling, because God knows we all are.
mm-hmm.
We may have chronic pain, we may have an illness, we might have gone through loss, we may be grieving, or life just might have disrupted on us. We might
Mm-hmm.
be going through a horrible patch in a relationship, or we lost our job. I think all
Mm-hmm.
of these things need examples. We talked about leading by example of a different way of being,
Mm-hmm.
and that sometimes you just have to take that first step, maybe before you're ready to do it. So the platform, I'm just hoping it will help people out there. I hope people will feel like their story is not that dissimilar. Of sure, the exact details are
Mm-hmm.
unique to each of us as humans, but there are so many threads in our stories that are shared.
Mm-hmm. And how was the memoir, and almost in a sense, and I may be off in this, but I wonder, releasing the words into that memoir, how was that almost likened to a spiritual awakening in you?
I think that when you write
Hmm.
memoir, you are writing as a present self, looking
Mm-hmm.
back at a time with some distance and wisdom. So I think that there is a great deal of wisdom that comes with finding the meaning in something. What was that all about? What did I experience? Am I different for the better? Am I more flexible and adaptable? Am I actually stronger than I was?
Mm-hmm.
Even though my life might be different and not what I expected or what I wished for. So I do agree. I think there is uh, a great awakening that can happen if you're willing to get raw and really go
Mm-hmm.
deep and ask why things happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And we're just not going to leave it there, but let's take a little pause here so that you can actually share with people how they can learn more about your journey, how they can connect with you, everything that you like to share about your platform. I'll, of course, have everything in the show notes, but just take time now to tell us about your purpose in all this, you've kind of talked about it, but what your purpose and your mission is now and how they can learn more and connect with you and support you in this.
Yeah. My purpose in doing this is to help people realize that there are ways to navigate illness and pain and loss by finding a different way to work with your body's limitations, but still hope for those possibilities. And today, while I'm working to bring the book out into the world, I am on Substack. I
Mhm.
have a publication called Life Inside Pain that I would welcome. To me, it's really about community. It's about sharing pieces of my journey that we've talked about today and letting people feel seen and share their own stories. So every couple weeks, I'll write about another little piece of my life with an insight, something I learned, some reflection from this hopefully wiser self that knows
Mhm.
a little more than she knew when she was back laying on her couch,
Mhm.
and hopefully give somebody the inkling of an idea that they can take forward. So that's at Nancy Deyo, which is my last name, Deyo.substack.com. And, I am out sharing videos that I produce of some of the things that I've learned on social media. And then, of course, there are opportunities to engage with wonderful people like you and
Thank you.
your community that you've built to get out and speak about these things.
Hmm. Now, this is quite interesting now, is that sometimes things can happen, and I would encourage everybody who is blessed enough to really learn about Nancy's story to please follow her, support her, subscribe to her Substack. I still need to do that. I'm so glad that you brought it up again because I like articles and um, pages on Substack. So I will make sure to subscribe to yours. But in terms of Nancy, how sometimes tragic or what can seem to be tragic situations can happen in a person's life and they shy away from doing certain things. But for you, you still do the best that you can in living and leading an active life despite all that you experience. So you said from the very beginning that the continent of Africa is one of your favorite places. Since your back injury and since all of this has happened, talk to us about the ways that the continent of Africa or even specific countries have still been a part of your journey and how you learned to embrace them even more as opposed to shrinking back and hiding from them.
Uh, I have always been an adventurer.
Hmm.
I very much still am. I actually think that I inherited that from my parents who had a bit of wanderlust also.
Oh.
And I am, in a sense, back to my passion for learning about local cultures and meeting people in different parts of the world and seeing how we're the same and how we're different. And I've taken many pauses in my career to travel. And now that I have the flexibility to do that, because I am not being paid to work 9 to 5, if you will,
Hmm.
I am back at it. And in fact, am spending part of the summer in Africa this summer,
Oh,
in Tanzania,
I
again,
love it.
revisiting some of the sites of the original, but not climbing Kilimanjaro. I
Uh-huh.
don't need to do that anymore. And I'll be in Uganda if Ebola
Oh,
doesn't take us
yeah.
over,
Hmm.
and pray that it won't, and
Yeah.
Rwanda.
Oh, wow. Oh, I absolutely love this because people can get so many lessons out of this, but yes, life happens. And even you giving the comparison of what your challenge is or was may not look like mine or the next person's, but we all living this human experience go through things, but it's all a matter of our perspective, our viewpoints, how we're going to navigate through them. And that is the key, is navigating through them, walking through them. Is that even when the pressure and the intensity is so high, it may feel as if there's never going to be a way out. But if we continue to just take one day at a time, put one foot literally or metaphorically in front of the other, and to keep going through, then we will see that seasons and circumstances do change. And that those low places will not always be low. Life has ebbs and it has flows. And so, for you, Nancy, what brings you in this day and time in 2026 now, after having had a 15-year journey of this, what brings you hope and what brings you joy to say that I'm not worried about what may be or what could come, but I'm choosing to live and thrive in this moment? Tell us about the hope and joy involved in that.
I have learned to not look back
Mm.
or look forward, but to exist in the now much more than I ever had, which allows you to feel the beauty of a moment, an experience, a connection with another human. I am much more today about the people that I love than I ever was before. And
Mhm.
I'm a curious global citizen that believes that most of the hope and most of the joy will come from those connections and the things that I learn and the wisdom that I gain from the people in remote places on this earth that are probably more like me than you would ever anticipate, yet have their distinctiveness that's truly beautiful. So I think that's what gives me hope.
Wow. And as we come to a close here, and your story is powerful is an understatement. Your story is definitely one that just not a book, but that could actually be a movie, knowing how you experience all of this. But Nancy, I'd like us to close with this. How would you uplift, encourage, or speak directly to a person who may be experiencing a really tough place and space in life, and they know that the person that they were is being outgrown, they're leaving it behind, and they're having a challenging time adjusting and even embracing this new one that they are becoming. They know it's there, but with the circumstance, they can't see the whole forest for the trees. They just don't know which way they're going to go. What would you tell that person who may hear your journey and deep down inside say, I would love to get there, but I just don't know? What would you tell that person?
I would tell them first and foremost that thriving is about interdependence
Mm.
and to lean on the people who are next to them, be it a spouse, a partner, a best friend, because you cannot do it on your own. The body, the brain, it needs the connection. So to lean into that first and foremost, I would tell them take a first step, any step, because the only way out is through. And even if it's scary or you're not sure if it's right, it will embolden you because you're taking action. I would also tell them that humans are built to survive and to recover in the human body is an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can recover from the deepest, darkest illness, loss, grief, but you need to have the mindset that you are going to find a way.
Mm, mm. That's true. And at the beginning, I asked, who is Nancy Deyo? And for this very last question, what do you like best about yourself today?
I think I like the blend of determination
Mm.
and humility.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Power Transformation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow or subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. It helps us inspire even more listeners. And don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a little power in their transformation. Until next time, keep bouncing back, keep rising, and be good to yourself and to others.